Hello, everyone. Welcome to Steve and Dave's 50 Years Ago This Month. This is a series where we take a look at the Billboard Top 100 or Hot 100 50 years ago.
Yeah.
This month, of course, it's going to be the chart from June 12th, 1971. So, Steve, who's up to bat?
Well, here we go. At number one in mid-June, it's Honeycomb with the One Ads. The Honeycomb was a family group, and they had a couple of hits. This was by far their biggest hit. No question about that. Kind of a song of the summer in a way. It is it's not one of those songs I think that holds up particularly well. Although I think maybe we see that differently.
I beg to differ. Yeah.
I think it's worth noting that Honeycomb's lead singer, Edna Wright, was in fact the sister of Darlene Love, the famed singer for Phil Spector, who's still active. The Honeycomb, again, they had a kind of moment in the late 60s and very early 70s, and they disbanded in 1973. They did put four songs on the top 40. But this was by far their biggest with One Ads. I don't really have much more to say about One Ads. It's again one of those, I guess, numbers that really resonate during the era. But I'm not so sure how well it holds up. But that's One Ads from the Honeycomb at number one. At number two, ladies and gentlemen, the world's greatest rock and roll band. So they say it's the Rolling Stones with Brown Sugar. They've got a couple thoughts about Brown Sugar.
Well, it was written during a time that at least Keith Richards was still heavily involved with heroin use and sugar. At the very least, could be considered a reference to that. Of course, Brown Sugar. The lyrics suggest romance or sex or something with young girls of color, and those two things are probably the least offensive parts of the song.
The lyrics of the song, by Jagger's own admission, he censors himself. He doesn't sing the same lyrics that he did. And he actually also talks about how he probably wouldn't be able to write a song like that, or at least the lyrics like that, the way he did at this point. It's a pretty raunchy song, pretty ribald song, and but it's also a song that really moves. And again, it comes from the era of the Stones where they have Mick Taylor, who, for my money, this was by far the best era. And Mick Taylor, who wasn't a writer, but was just an extraordinary guitarist, and really Richards, I think, paired very well with. Anyway, this is from the golden era as far as I'm concerned. It's one of the classic Stone songs, Brown Sugar.
Right, and you can't think of a concert today without it.
No, it's absolutely true. Yeah, it's
one of their great hits.
Absolutely, it's in the pantheon for sure of the Stones. At number three, it's the brother and sister act from Downey, California. It's the Carpenters, ladies and gentlemen. It's Carpenters with Rainy Days and Mondays.
Rainy Days and Mondays from the album The Carpenters. It was their also the Tan album, peaked at number 2, but this was the second hit of theirs that was written by the songwriting team of Paul Williams and Roger Nichols, part of the A&M songwriting stable, and also incredibly successful in their own right. This was the fourth number one adult contemporary. Rainy Days and Mondays was the fourth number one adult contemporary hit for that songwriting team. I think the other three, two of the other three were Carpenters hits, and one was Three Dog Night, Out in the Country.
Yes.
But within a year, that was 4 number one hits within a year. in the adult contemporary chart. And of course, when we talk about adult contemporary, we mean easy listening. So that's what they were known for. Williams had gold records for "We've Only Just Begun" and "Out in the Country." This was released April 23rd of the year, and playing in the background were Joe Osborne, one of the very early supporters and pushers of the Carpenters, on bass, Hal Blaine on drums. Of course, Karen would take over the drum duties on tour and so on, but in the studio it was always Hal Blaine. Tommy Morgan on harmonica.
Yeah.
And this is one of the guys that was just omnipresent. He was, if there was a harmonica on a hit song in the '60s, it was probably being played by Tommy Morgan. And Bob Messenger on the tenor sax had a fantastic solo on this. Is actually a band member of the Carpenters and went on tour with them and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Also played bass and a few other things, but I think primarily bass on tour because Joe Osborne wasn't around for that.
Yeah, it's a it's a classic for the Carpenters, as you're suggesting, a kind of middle of the road, easy listening kind of song, but enormously popular and incredibly well produced and well arranged. I think what we can say about the Carpenters is that those records were damn near perfect. There was something about, I mean, not just the fact that they had the best of the best in terms of session musicians, you're absolutely right about that, but also just the production values and the arrangements were just stellar. These were carefully crafted songs, carefully crafted records, and they just stand the test of time because of that.
Yeah, and I think the people who were around and knew about the production of the songs credit Richard Carpenter with most of that, of what you're talking about, that precision, the attention to detail. And he was a very important part of that mix. He, in fact, it just strangely enough, the B-side of this single was Saturday, one of the few songs that he sang.
He sang, yeah.
Himself.
Yeah, it's really. It's it's easy enough, I suppose, to see the Carpenters as it's kind of a hokey group, very kind of white bread, very vanilla, the kind of group that your parents and grandparents would find, likable and unoffensive and all that. But they were, certainly this was their golden era, and they really did, in fact, dominate the charts for several years. And again, those records, they just really do stand the test of time. Now, there's no question that the songwriting is superb, and there's just, there's no question about that. But her voice, the arrangements, it's just, it's just timeless. And so, yeah.
And of course, the musicians were, studio musicians were the director.
No question.
Almost exclusively. And you couldn't have a variety show in the early to mid '70s without the Carpenter song, singing the song. They were an absolute staple.
That's absolutely right. Which I think, yeah, and I think that kind of undercut their street cred a little bit. They really, even during their heyday, they really were seen as a kind of, a very kind of vanilla act. And I think the fact that they were on TV so much, I think probably sort of added to that. But no question that these Rain Days and Mondays is just one of those songs. I mean, it's like a song that's you're going to hear in a century. I mean, I think it's just one of those sort of timeless classics. It just sort of transcends the pop charts of the early '70s. It's just entered the American canon in a way.
As you suggested, it also transcended the age barriers, the generation gap.
That's right.
I think they could have appeared on Lawrence Welk without offending anyone.
Yes, they could. Yes. Yeah.
So,
no, that's right. Yeah.
If you have an act like that, your street credibility is going to suffer. But
Sure.
you can't argue with success, and they were immensely successful.
Absolutely, no question about that. And so we have the Carpenters again at number 3 with Rainy Days and Mondays. At number 4, you can't argue with success. It's that Lovable Lad from Liverpool. It's Ringo Starr at number 4 with It Don't Come Easy. It Don't Come Easy is the song that is produced by his pal George Harrison, and Harrison, of course, then plays the lead guitar. And I think you can argue that this song is really very much sort of Harrison really makes the song his. And while Ringo has the writing credit and all, it very much is a kind of Harrison number, as it was the case with many of Ringo Starr's singles in this era. I mean, he was a person who who's easy to work with, a person who was not afraid to ask for help, I think, on some level, and people came out of the woodwork for this. And so It Don't Come Easy is a song that Ringo started writing in the late 60s during a kind of tumultuous period in the Beatles' life. And he finished it up. It took him a couple years to finish it up. But once it's over, I think it's actually, once he got it done, It Don't Come Easy. Yeah, Don't Come Easy, yeah. It's a very powerful song. It was released as a non-album single, just standalone single. Eventually ended up on the Ringo album in later years, but it peaks at number 4. I think it's easy to forget the amount of success that Ringo had as a singles artist in this era. I think you could argue that of the 4 Beatles, Ringo had, was having the most success, or right up there with any of the Beatles. He was charting all the time. Eventually, Ringo puts, and this is quite staggering in a way, he puts 8 songs in the top 10.
Yeah,
I mean, it's amazing. I don't think you would have, of all the Beatles, wouldn't have come from Ringo. On this,
he's not a great singer.
No,
he's probably of the 4 Beatles, the least talented singer. But
I think that's fair.
He has a likable voice, a likable vocal style, and he's easy to listen to. But as you suggest, like Billy Shears, the vocalist for Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, he gets by with a little help from his friends.
That he does.
And he always gets it, right? He always gets it. There's virtually no Ringo hit that did not involve some other member of the Beatles.
No,
in some capacity.
That's absolutely right. And then that continues even to today, into the 21st century, with Ringo's all-star band, which gets thrown out every few years. Kind of who's who of contemporary music who want to play with Ringo. I mean, there's a certain talent by recruiting and working with these people. That's a kind of talent in itself, because obviously not every musician is able to do that. Not every musician is able to kind of have that stable of friends, and not able then to create an environment where they want to work with him and work together. But this is a consistent with Ringo throughout his career, as you're suggesting. On this particular
it's
song,
probably what got him into the Beatles in the first place, right?
I think that's right. Oh, I think that's absolutely right. It's, you have on this song, for example, you got Klaus Voormann on bass. In Voormann, kind of a fifth Beatle in a way, was a friend, a pal from the Hamburg days, and continued, for decades to sort of be a pal of the Beatles, appear on albums all of the time, or songs all the time from the Beatles. Also then on keyboards with this song is Gary Wright, who will hit, kind of pop gold in the mid 70s with his Dreamweaver LP. And just, and again, Harrison's solo, the intro and the coming out, how it closes, it makes the song. It's a strong song, and one of Ringo's best, I think. And so at number 4, we have It Don't Come Easy from the magical Ringo Starr. At number 5, it is, oh God, this has got to be the song of the summer, I suppose, on some level. It's Three Dog Night's Joy to the World, which we talked about before. But Dave, you have a couple thoughts about Joy to the World.
Well, to me, the amazing thing about Joy to the World is the fact that it almost wasn't recorded, or at least not by Three Dog Night. Chuck Negron was the the big proponent. He said we need a fun song. The group was going through kind of rocky times,
Right.
And this is a song where really the entire group, and including the background musicians, the other members of the band, are all heard.
Absolutely.
In vocal roles, and it's a huge hit. But the other two didn't like it, didn't want to record it, and it was just because Chuck was really, really insistent that they ended up doing it, and became one of their all-time big hits.
Yeah, it did. And again, it's a Hoyt Axton number. And again, this is really very much a kind of classic of Three Dog Night. It's a song that I think most people will know. I suppose this is safe to say that if you know a Three Dog Night song, it's Joy to the World, right? That's the one you probably are able to hum or something. You know, Jeremiah was a bullfrog. Right. At number 6 is Carole King, the double A side. It's Too Late and I Feel the Earth Move, from the incredible album on Ode, Tapestry, produced by Lou Adler. It's one of the great albums ever. And Adler worked hard at making it a kind of homey feel, almost a kind of demo feel, not overproduced, very informal. And that informality even extended to the cover, right, with her sitting, in her home in LA.
And it's worth mentioning
with the cat.
It's worth mentioning, I think, that this was one of the albums that didn't have a lot of studio musicians involved. That had
That's right.
Friends and companions of Carole King. She brought these people into the studio. She was working with people she wanted to work with. And it was a real departure in that sense, too, from the way things had been
very much
for over a decade.
Very much so, right? Yeah.
So, and that's, I think, largely thanks to Lou Adler, too, who was able to do that and was willing to do that as producer.
No question. I think that's absolutely right. It's this Carole King's high watermark as a solo artist. She will later this summer in '71 release her next album, Music, which also goes to number 1. But it's Tapestry. That's the album that we remember Carole King by. That's her masterpiece, and it very much, I think, launched or solidified the era of the singer-songwriter. If you talk about the early 1970s, it very much is this era of, it's James Taylor, it's Joni Mitchell, it's Jackson Browne, it's Randy Newman. It's the people who are singing their own work, oftentimes in very simple kinds of arrangements. And Tapestry is, it's the forerunner in that regard. So let's go to number 7, because number 7, it's a solo effort by young Donny Osmond. Donny Osmond of the Osmonds, in case there was any question, and it's his Sweet and Innocent.
Yeah, this was written by Rick Hall, the guy producer who put together the Swampers and
right.
God damn it, the studio.
Yeah, Muscle Shoals Studio. Yep, in Alabama, right.
Muscle Shoals. Yeah, of course. So Rick Hall of Muscle Shoals, and Billy Sherrill. Don't know if you know anything about Billy Sherrill, but he co-wrote "Stand by Your Man."
That's right.
Wynette.
That's right.
And "The Most Beautiful Girl."
Yep. Great Charlie Rich song.
But what he's probably best known for was the fact that he produced George Jones for like 2 decades.
Yeah.
Including George Jones' big comeback hit, "He Stopped Loving Her Today."
The Possum. Yeah, George Jones is great. Yeah.
And George Jones hated that song.
Yes, he did.
He thought it was morose. He said nobody's going to listen to this dirge. He tried to sing it with I don't know, like Sunday Morning Coming Down melody or something.
Yeah.
Some Chris Christopherson thing, and Cheryl said you can't do that. That melody has been taken already. So,
Yeah, that's right. You know,
so he had to kind of force him to sing the song and to sing it that particular way. But I think it remains his greatest single hit.
yeah, I think that's right too. I think that's right. You know, you know, with Hall and Cheryl writing Sweet and Innocent, you have to wonder if they had a different kind of intent, a different kind of direction for the song. I mean, the way Osmond delivers it is okay. There's one way, but you wonder when those guys sat down and penned this thing if they were thinking or kind of moving in a different direction. But nevertheless,
yeah, you really don't have to wonder too much because it was also recorded by Roy Orbison in 1958.
yeah, there we go.
Yeah. And the lyrics were different. The Osmonds changed the lyrics.
Right.
In the original form, this is about you're the perfect girl for me. You know, you're kind of the sort of girl your mother would want you to marry. You're sweet, you're innocent, you haven't been around, you don't understand double entendres. Kind of the virginal bride, and
yes.
That's what guys back in that day, at least, were looking for, and that's the sense that the song was intended.
Yes.
In 1958, and then the Osmonds get a hold of it, and it takes on a different meaning.
This is the thing that, okay. So if I yes,
sweet and innocent, much too young and beautiful for me.
It just seems an odd choice. It just seems an odd choice for the Osmonds that they had to do so much, you know, tweaking to make it, you know, acceptable to have, you know, Donny sing, maybe acceptable, you know, in the context of Mormon culture. I don't know, but it just seems like such an odd choice for Donny Osmond. This is sort of his debut, right? This is his first real solo number.
Right. It was recorded as an Osmonds song. The brothers were all involved. But this was the first song that was billed as a Donny Osmond solo.
Yeah.
Single. And you're absolutely right. It's strange. He's what 13 at the most. 13
at the most, yeah.
Probably close to 11.
Yes.
And he's talking about a girl who's too young and too innocent for him. A very strange choice, but it's also part of a kind of a pattern that goes on with the Donny Osmond hits. He also had hits with "Go Away, Little Girl."
Yes.
Although the problem there wasn't that she was too young, that she was a little girl, because who else would an 11-year-old boy be seeing other than little girls? But he was involved with someone else, and she was tempting him to become unfaithful. Another hit, "Too Young."
Yep.
Another hit, "Puppy Love."
Yep.
It's strange. It's just, it is kind of strange. But he took it to the bank. And one of the things that that he had with Donny Osmond, with Michael Jackson, for once, you had singers. The frontmen were guys that young girls could actually fantasize about being with, in some sense, because they weren't young men; they were boys. So I think that's something that really explained much of their fandom.
Oh, I think so. I mean, I think that's largely the case. It's in retrospect, it's all quite odd. There was clearly Osmond mania in the early 70s. Was clearly Donny Osmond mania, and he was, I don't know, amongst the most popular, most well-known people in the United States. He would, along with Michael Jackson. But if you, like you're doing, if you kind of step back and you dissect it a little bit, it is at best peculiar. And it's just one of those, yeah, it's just one of those odd things that looking back, it just does seem really, really, really strange.
Well, and if you're looking back and you're looking at that particular time, it's hard to talk about the Osmonds without talking about the Jacksons
Right,
because
right.
the similarities and the parallels are just so numerous. You're
Well,
talking about a family act, a brothers act, um, fronted by the youngest member. Um, in fact, uh, when people heard the first Osmonds hit, most of them thought it was the Jackson Five,
sure,
who had
sure.
already had a
Yeah.
number of number one hits by that point. And if you look at the fan magazines from back in the day, like Tiger Beat, um, the the Donny Michael comparisons were numerous. Like almost no Tiger Beat cover without them on it somewhere next
It's,
to each other.
you know, if you didn't know better, you would think this is almost a kind of something set up by a publicist, right? You've got
Right.
this,
Yeah.
you've got this black group from Indiana, you've got this white group from Utah, and yet these parallels are just so, yeah, they just seem they're so interlinked. You're
They
absolutely
even
right.
both they even both had a Saturday cartoon show,
They did.
and I think the Osmond show. I'm not entirely sure about this, but I think the Osmond show actually um, replaced the the
That
Jackson show.
that sounds right to me too. Yeah, that sounds right to me as well. But yeah, so they were. I mean, so you could be at school and there would be a Donny Osmond notebook right next to someone who had a Michael Jackson notebook. It's just it was odd. It was very, very, very strange. But there you have. So you have Donny Osmond at number 7 with Sweet and Innocent. But we'll get back to the charts in a second. But Dave, I wanted to. It's mid-June, 1971, and all of Washington is still talking about the nuptials of a presidential daughter. And so I just wanted to take you to Time Magazine, mid-June 1971, and well, you've got a wedding. Trisha Nixon marries Edward Cox in the White House. Which is the last wedding in the White House. There was a kind of tradition of weddings in the White House, but this is the last time in '71 that it's happened. Um,
And just in the nick of time too, I think.
that's the thing. Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, just in the nick of time. It's adding to the complexity of Richard Nixon, of course, is that he was a family man, and by all accounts, a solid father. His daughters, I think, had genuine affection for him, as did his wife. There again, I mean, it just the goes on and on with Nixon, but he was an infinitely complex individual. But he was a proud papa when his daughter got married in the White House. And again, it was almost a kind of royal wedding in a way. And so the nation was kind of agog at the idea of a young Nixon getting betrothed in the Rose Garden. So I wanted to take a look at that. Let's go back to the charts, though. It's number 8. You've got the Cornelius brothers and Sister Rose, another family act, with Treat Her Like a Lady. Treat Her Like a Lady peaks at number 3. The Cornelius brothers and Sister Rose will have another top 5 hit, Too Late to Turn Back Now, which will eventually peak at number 2. Those are really their kind of two major hits, and they again sort of disappear from view in the mid 1970s. But this was very much an era where family acts, there's a really kind of resonance with family acts, and a lot of the acts that we've been talking about today, there's a familial connection there. And once again, we have that with Treat Her Like a Lady. The Cornelius clan worked together pretty closely for several years. And they were on the United Artists label. I don't have much more to say about them than that. But once again, these, kind of rocketing to the top of the charts with a single. And here you have it.
Well, I have to admit that when I saw this "Treat Her Like a Lady," I thought of the wrong song. because this song doesn't really ring a bell for me. I thought of the Motown Treat Her
Right,
Like a Lady,
right.
right? Was it Temptations?
Sounds right. I think that's right. Yeah.
I think that's it. But which is a great song, and I thought that's what we were going to be talking about, but it's not. They're two
It's
different songs,
different songs.
and the Motown song is the superior of the two.
I think that that's probably right. At number 9, it seems as though every month this group, this quasi group, is in the charts. But at number 9, you have the Partridge Family with "I'll Meet You Halfway." So thought about, yeah.
And because Steve gets hives when he has to
Ugh,
talk about
I do.
bubblegum
I do.
hits. I took this one in addition to Sweet and Innocent. This is the second really bubblegum hit of this top 10. Partridge Family, this is from their Up to Date album, written by Wes Farrell and Jerry
Oh,
Goffin.
Jerry Goffin. That's right. That's unbelievable.
So we know Jerry Goffin primarily. We know him as a songwriter, as a lyricist, right? But we know him primarily as the second half of the Goffin King.
Right.
songwriting.
That's right. Jerry Goffin, inductee into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Jerry Goffin. But here he is writing a song for the Partridge Family.
And he was inducted with Carole King into the
Yes, he
Hall of
was. Yes, he was.
Fame.
Not with Wes Farrell, I will add, but maybe that's coming. But maybe that's coming.
But Jerry Goffin co-wrote "Will You Love Me Tomorrow?" Co-wrote "The Locomotion," "Go Away, Little Girl," which we've also talked about.
That's we have.
"Up on the Roof." A total of 114 Billboard Hot 100 hits.
It's incredible.
That's pretty amazing.
That's incredible. Yes.
As you mentioned, Wes Farrell doesn't have as much to his credit. I think Indian Lake by the Cowsills was one of his things. Oh, Hang On Sloopy.
Yes, there you go.
Co-wrote. But otherwise, he wrote 30 of the Partridge Family songs, including the theme song for the TV show, Come On Get Happy, Doesn't Somebody Want to Be Wanted, which we've also talked about in this show. So he arguably did a real service for the Partridge Family with his songwriting and his producing. Of course, as on all the Partridge Family songs, the Wrecking Crew were the session players here, including the Ron Higdon singers, who were the singers for the Partridge Family. Look, even as a kid, you listen to the Partridge Family songs, and you're sitting there, you're watching the show, or you're listening to one of the 45s, and you're trying to match up who's singing this. Occasionally you would do that. At some point, it became clear there's no point.
That's true, but you always tried as a kid watching them. You know, when they'd be practicing in their garage. Yeah.
And I don't think Danny Bonaduce is the voice that I'm hearing here. David Cassidy was the only one who did any major vocal work for the Partridge Family. Of course, he was the lead singer, and played Keith Partridge, and Keith Partridge was the lead singer for the Partridge Family.
Right.
Shirley Jones, singer, actress, with great success.
Extraordinary success. Yes.
Played Oklahoma, Music Man, I believe.
Yeah.
Had a lot of success in musical movies up until that point.
No question.
And she could sing, but they didn't have her sing often because clearly Keith was the draw. So in the background, you would hear an occasional female voice and think, well, that's Mom Partridge or maybe Susan Day.
Maybe. Yeah, Susan Day. the show was pretty successful. It wasn't maybe as wildly successful as we think, but it was pretty successful on ABC. What was successful though was this this output, this musical output. Talk about albums, you talk about these singles. It was just a kind of assembly line of hits. And so during 1971 in particular, this was really the Partridge Family's zenith. And so they're just dominating the charts in an odd sort of way. So Wes Farrell and Bell Records, somebody has to be making a ton off of these songs.
They're following the success formula of the Monkees, right? Who were the first ones to do it.
Right.
I mean, not even Ricky Nelson was really
not like this.
Because it was a test tube group put together for this particular thing.
Right.
And with the marriage of television and music marketing, they proved it could be done with the Monkees to great success. And then this was a second very successful.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, Scooby-Doo was also going to go in that direction. That little mystery band that they ran around, it was supposed to be full of drums and guitars and stuff. They were supposed to be a band. And
I can see that.
Every episode was supposed to have, you know, at least one new song. They ended up not going there, but
well, no, I definitely
first concept for the first Scooby-Doo.
Well, which speaks to sort of the overall. I mean, you speak to the overall this kind of genre, if you will. I mean, this idea of kind of manufactured music, where you're kind of melding image and song. I mean, it's music video in a way. I mean, certainly the Monkees that was very apparent. Maybe a little less so with the Partridge Family, but this was all. I mean, this was all very calculated, and it kind of has a calculated sound to it. There's no question about that. But boy, at their peak, the Partridge Family, they were selling a lot of records each week. I mean, just a tremendous amount of records. Yeah. It's extraordinary.
And I bought some of them.
I confess I bought some of them too. Sound Magazine LP.
I even bought the greatest hits a few years back. For nostalgic purposes. It doesn't hold up well. It doesn't hold up nearly as well as I thought it would. The Monkees hold up better. I can still listen to the Monkees' greatest hits.
Sure. Well, yeah. I mean, it's right. I mean, that's brave of you to admit in front of everyone here that you bought a Partridge Family CD as an adult. That's good. That's real growth, Dave. But there we go.
Thank you so much.
There we go. So there we have the one and only Partridge Family at number 9. Quickly at number 10, it's Aretha Franklin. We've talked about Aretha Franklin and her take on Paul Simon's Bridge Over Troubled Waters. This also is the double A side, Brand New Me. Bridge Over Troubled Waters, of course, was an award-winning song for Simon and Garfunkel. And then a year later, Aretha Franklin cuts it and wins her own set of awards. It's just an incredible artist. In this era, she was releasing a lot of covers where she would put her own stamp on them. And this is another example of that.
Yeah, and Bridge Over Troubled Water is a completely different song than the song we hear Simon and Garfunkel sing.
Yeah, that's for sure. No, that's absolutely right. I mean, sometimes I think we forget about Aretha Franklin's chart success, but she was an amazingly potent cultural figure in the early 1970s, and so there she is at number 10. We're going to cherry pick a little bit here in the rest of the charts. At number 11, we have a group that was actually formed in Idaho, of all places. For a long time, they're known as Paul Revere and the Raiders, but they just shortened it to the Raiders in the early 70s. And a song called Indian Reservation, the lament of the Cherokee people, which is, I think to be fair, it's a kind of protest song. And this is the era. This is definitely the era of Native American activism. The American Indian movement is formed roughly at this time. Alcatraz Island had been occupied by Native American activists for 3 years. That was just winding up in the summer of 71. I think there was Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee had been published. this was, I think, just at the time where many Americans were sort of just recognizing what, I mean, it's odd to say this, but I think people were just starting to come to grips with the idea that the Native American culture had been bulldozed, and that it was essentially a kind of genocide. And this song comes at, I think, a very interesting time, a time of great tumult politically in the United States, but also a time of really increasing awareness. And so, I mean, Indian Reservation has its place as one of the more powerful songs of the early 1970s.
Well, I think kind of the seed for all that was the hippie counterculture
Yes.
in the late 60s, who saw kind of the return to nature, the natural values, the living on the land, the communal thing. They saw the Indians as being a great model lifestyle for all
Yes,
of that.
I think that's right.
And you would see all sorts of fashions with the Indian tassels, and that was kind of the takeoff point. And then you had movies like Little Big Man with Dustin Hoffman, showing some atrocities,
Right.
of the sort that we would read about them in Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee.
That's right.
And one of the great spokesmen of the environmental movement then in the PBS, no, not the PBS,
It is it's the PSA announcement, the public service commercial. Yeah.
her public service announcement
Yeah.
was an Indian gentleman, a chief, saddened by all the litter and pollution he saw around him. Of course, he was
Right.
played by an Italian, but
Yeah,
the
that's
idea was that
yeah. So people start pollution, people can stop it. The so-called Crying Indian commercial, which we'll put
right.
we'll put in the playlist. It's Indian Reservation. Indian Reservation is one of a number of hits that the Raiders had. The Raiders were a popular band in the 60s. Their popularity was greatly aided by the fact that they were, again, on TV. They were sort of the house band for Dick Clark on an ABC show he had. And they hosted their own ABC variety show for a while. It's also the case that this is a band that very much benefited from the work of the Wrecking Crew. This is, again, one of so many bands whose music was basically recorded by these great studio musicians. Oftentimes, the members of the Raiders would come in and try to kind of see what was going on and try to somehow replicate the solos and the various kinds of things that these amazing musicians were pulling off. And generally, the Raiders weren't able to do it. It's worth acknowledging.
The drummer.
Yes.
The drummer. And this is also going to be on our playlist. But he was just hopelessly unable to replicate the drumming that Hal Blaine had done. For one thing, Hal Blaine had a set of tom-toms,
Sure.
which it's a special setup, special kit, which if you don't have it, it's very hard to act like you have it. Anyway, he fails spectacularly in trying to look like he's doing this drumming.
No, it's really, it fails spectacularly is the phrase. It's really quite jarring how off he is. So yeah, Hal Blaine is on drums on this track. The great Carole Kay is on bass, and also a shout out to the magnificent Artie Butler, who is at the organ at the Hammond B3, who is really, I think that the organ piece and particularly the outro really makes this song. Mark Lindsay, who was the lead singer for the Raiders, handles the vocals here, but this really becomes one of the more important songs of this era, I guess. It does peak at #1, and it is, I think, arguably the biggest song that the Raiders ever had, one of the biggest. And so
I remember when this song was a hit, and I loved it, and I was appropriately enraged every time I heard it, and so on.
That's right. That's right.
For a young kid listening to it.
I mean, and not to be, not to be too cynical, but there were, a number of songs like this that sort of, spoke to a various kind of social ill. But this one did seem, there was a kind of righteous anger that fueled this song and made it, I think, significant. So we have the Raiders at number 11 with the Indian Reservation. A little bit farther down the charts, country artist, guitarist named Jerry Reed, very kind of versatile guy with the song "When You're Hot, You're Hot."
When you're hot, you're hot. This actually peaked at number 9.
Yeah.
But it's number 18 this week. Is it his only crossover? I think it is. But
May well be.
Jerry Reed,
yeah,
an incredibly versatile and incredibly talented singer-songwriter. This song was also number 1 on the country chart for 5 weeks.
Oh yeah.
Reed is particularly known for his unique picking technique.
Yep.
And well respected. And in fact, when Elvis recorded his song, Guitar Man, they had to get Jerry Reed into the studio because none of the other session players could do it. He said, Jerry Reed said, quote, I picked with my fingers and tuned that guitar up all weird kind of ways. He said, your guys, they're just straight pickers. They can't do it,
Right.
So
right.
Elvis recorded a number of Jerry Reed songs and worked with him quite a bit. The producer, by the way, of this was Chet Atkins.
Amazing guitarist in himself. I mean, one of the great guitarists of all time. Yeah.
So this got the Grammy Award for Best Country Vocal Performance.
Right.
Male. But Jerry Reed was also on television quite a bit. It was a regular on the Glenn Campbell Good Time Hour. And this "You're Hot, You're Hot," it became kind of a slogan.
Yes.
The Flip Wilson show used this all the time. When you're hot, you're hot, and when you're not, you're not.
You're not.
It's a humorous song, and it's. I used to be able to sing it by heart.
Sure. Well, I think kind of everybody could in the day. It became a kind of cultural catchphrase in a weird sort of way. It's Jerry Reed also was pals with Burt Reynolds and appeared among other things in the Smokey and the Bandit films, which I just got a glimpse of.
Enough, that's probably what he's best known for, right?
I think that's right. I think that's unfortunate too. I mean, what Jerry Reed made his own choices, but I think it kind of undercut his musical abilities. He was always a kind of lighthearted, almost kind of goofy performer, which I think somehow, I don't know, took away from the fact that he was really one of the great guitarists of this era, and was a go-to guitarist, as you're already suggesting with the Elvis story. But so there you have at 18 with "When You're Hot, You're Hot." We'll look at a couple more songs in a second, though. But it's mid-June 1971, and I just wanted to take a look, Dave, at the cover of Rolling Stone, where we have this guy on the cover, and I'm just wondering why Elton John would be on the cover of Rolling Stone in 71. Do you think Elton John?
Well, that was his breakthrough year, right?
Yeah, it was.
When America discovered Elton John, and America discovered Elton John first.
It's true.
He came and performed in LA, and
that's right.
And that was basically it, right? They found him, they fell in love with him.
That's right.
Off the bat, and from there, it's all history.
It is all history. That was that week he was at the Troubadour with Dee Murray and Nigel Olsson, the Elton John trio, and from there, then it really was, he had been discovered, and like you say, he was discovered in the United States first. He is really, a very important figure. It's interesting that Elton John has, throughout the decades been this, amazing performer, but in his initial incarnation, he really was, I think, considered part of this sort of singer-songwriter group. And what's interesting is that,
Well,
of course,
and it was the music scene discovered him, right?
that's right. That's right.
Three Dog Night
That's right.
and Russell were sitting in the Troubadour audience those nights, and these are the guys that just were so amazed and
That's exactly right.
just brought him into the fold.
No question. And Elton John has always been very open about the fact that he is his lyricist is a guy named Bernie Taupin, and Taupin and John have been a partner for half a century now. And so you can see the shirt that he's wearing has, well, you can kind of see it here, has Bernie Taupin on it. Theirs is a very, compelling relationship. But if it's mid 1971, I mean, the world is starting to talk about Elton John, and so it makes a complete sense that Rolling Stone would have him on the cover. At number 21, then, a couple more songs. Number 21, you have The Doors with Love Her Madly from the LA Woman LP on Elektra. Love Her Madly would eventually peak at number 11. And of course, The Doors are, they're one of the great bands of all time, certainly one of the great bands of the late 1960s. They hit number one twice with Light My Fire and Hello, I Love You. They probably, though, sold a lot of albums. They sold a lot of albums internationally. They were enormously popular international group.
And continue to sell.
And continue to sell.
Longevity, yeah.
That's absolutely the case. I mean, it's the Doors really only are it's really only about a 3 or 4 year period where the Doors are an active foursome. It would be just a couple of weeks after this chart in early July where Morrison will die in Paris. The Doors will try to kind of lumber on as a trio for a short while, but Morrison's death in London or in Paris effectively ends the group, and that will come to the surface here in a couple of weeks in early July of 71. But I have to tell you that this one of my favorite Doors songs. I'm not an enormous Doors fan. I like actually some of the deeper cuts on the albums as opposed to the singles, but the Doors were a fascinating group. They were a group that didn't have a bass player. They had Manzarek on the organ, Ray Manzarek on the organ, oftentimes played the bass parts. But there was a certain kind of electricity with Morrison that was undeniable. But it's also worth noting that this is really the end of the Doors in that, Morrison is so erratic that their performances are shambolic at best. And he actually makes his way to Europe to kind of, cool out and to kind of find himself. And I think there is a sense of relief amongst other band members that maybe Morrison will kind of rekindle his energies, because he is a raging alcoholic at this point in 1971, and their performances are so god awful that it was a time for a break for everyone. But of course, he never makes it back to the United States. You have a thought about Love Her Madly or the Doors in general, Dave?
Well, I agree with you in liking the song. I think it's one of the songs of theirs that I really enjoy. He was fleeing the States because of his legal problems as well, arising out of performances in Florida, where he was arrested for indecent exposure, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But yes, erratic, problematic. It was the band was going downhill.
It was
because
Morrison was. It was. Yeah, I think that's well stated, and I think everybody recognized that. Yeah, the band members included, right? The band was really only as strong as Jim Morrison.
To speculate what would have happened had he lived, if he had been able to make a recovery.
Agreed. Yeah.
Able to rekindle something special, but
yeah. It's all speculation, but it is the case that this is really the swan song essentially for the Doors with Love Her Madly from the LA Woman.
Worth mentioning that he was the second member of his generation to join the infamous and dark 27 Club.
No. Yeah, that's right. This is that so-called club at that time. This included Hendrix, included Janis Joplin, and of course then included.
Joplin died earlier in '71.
Yeah, there was a certain, I mean, there was a certain darkness surrounding rock and roll in 1971 because of these deaths. I think there was a certain kind of, a kind of moment where people were sort of evaluating the sort of the industry, the lifestyle, the choices that people were making. I think it really was. I remember this being, there was a certain kind of shadowing that it felt odd that popular music there was just something had been taken through these deaths, and just, what was going on.
But I think it's also worth noting that nothing really changed.
Well, I think that's true too. I think that's absolutely right. Yeah.
Just
in the end,
be the way of things. So.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Right. So the last song we want to talk about comes from really a very unusual, interesting musical piece, Andrew Lloyd Webber. We'll talk a lot about this, but it's from Jesus Christ Superstar. The song is I Don't Know How to Love Him, and it's the Yvonne Elliman version, which in mid-June of '71 is at 28. So some thoughts about this song, Dave?
Well, right. Helen Reddy is also on this chart.
That's right.
This song, I Don't Know How to Love Him. One of the very few times that has actually happened. Used to happen quite a bit more often in the '50s, where artists would just take whatever songs were available, and many would record the same song at approximately the same time. But in the early '70s, that was no longer the case. And in fact, Jesus Christ Superstar, we've talked about this before, was kind of a kickstart to a wave of popular Christianity.
Yes.
I guess.
Yes.
In the early '70s, Christianity became hip again, after having been kind of suspect for a number of years throughout the '60s, where kids who grew up going to church decided that wasn't their thing anymore. But Jesus was also kind of a hippie icon in a different sense.
Yeah.
He was a pacifist, long hair, beard, wearing sandals.
That's right.
And so, kind of a figure that that hippies and young people who aspire to be cool could identify with.
That's exactly right.
The church, and I think this is where Tim Rice and Andrew Lloyd Webber picked him up. Was all right. Here's this guy. Let's take a look at this guy and see what he is beyond the church narrative.
I think that's right.
But interestingly enough, the songs, the singles from Jesus Christ Superstar, they were recorded and released in order to finance the Broadway musical. The Broadway musical couldn't get financing, so they released the songs. The first one being Jesus Christ Superstar, and through the success of those singles sales, and the album was also released, they got together enough money that they could actually stage it on Broadway.
Yeah.
On was staged all over the world. But.
Absolutely. This speaks to the controversial nature of it. I think it's lost on many of us now, but at the time, this was considered by some blasphemous, right? That this whole even effort to sort of make Jesus, hip and make Jesus as hippie or whatever, and this rock music, all of this, it was just seen as an abomination by many. And so in its own way, Broadway was a pretty conservative place. And so, they had to kind of drum up the funds themselves, as you're suggesting. I would also add that savvy Christians and savvy Christian groups also marketed Jesus in this way, if you will, marketed maybe in quotes, but the idea is that this Christ figure, he's cool, he's one of us, he's one of you. And so there was this kind of back and forth with this image of the pacifist, sandal wearing, long haired Jesus that it really, I think, very much marked this era. I think there's no question about it, right? Whether it was Godspell or again, a whole host of kind of more contemporary kind of services involving popular music, rock music. There was this kind of awakening that Jesus was a kind of figure for this time, that he really spoke to those people who were in the streets protesting war, that kind of thing.
Right.
Very interesting.
And we've
very
already talked
interesting
about
moment.
Put Your Hand in the Hand.
Oh yeah.
And it was kind of a wave in
Yeah.
the early 70s.
That's right. No, that's exactly right. And Yvonne Elliman, of course, will go on to have some more chart success in the disco era of the 70s here in a few years, singing songs from Barry Gibb. And I think she appears on the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack. But her version here is really quite amazing. This is Yvonne Elliman appears in the is on the stage, is part of the stage.
Yvonne Elliman plays Mary Magdalene.
It's a great
on
story.
stage. She plays the role in the movie as well. And I think anybody from back in the day identify her version as the authentic version, as
Right.
the version that you would choose to listen to. Helen Reddy, as I said before, was more successful, and even on this chart, she was more than 10 positions above Yvonne Elliman. In fact, the Yvonne Elliman version wasn't even released until Helen Reddy started to have some legs with her version in the charts.
Wow.
So the people who wanted to finance the Broadway show said, well, let's get our single out as well. On the adult contemporary charts, Elliman almost caught up with Helen Reddy.
Right.
Helen Reddy peaked at number 13 on the Hot 100 and number 12 on the adult contemporary. And Elliman only reached number 28 on the Hot 100, but made it to number 15 adult contemporary. Had a similar sort of situation in England when they released it there, but Julia Clark had also released a version,
good.
and they competed with each other.
Yeah.
And they both peaked at 47 over there. So, in terms of her success on the charts, she had some bad luck. I think it's worth mentioning. Going back to Helen Reddy here, this was her first hit, the first hit that she had.
Yes.
And Capitol Records executive Artie Mogul had heard the song, liked it, pitched it to Linda Ronstadt, who hated it. It was a terrible song. Took it to Helen Reddy, who also didn't like it, but was offered a singles contract.
Right.
So she took it. Had, as I said, her first hit with this, and it led to her first album contract, which then had "I Am Woman,"
right,
and that was the beginning of her career.
Yeah, and Helen Reddy, of course, has an enormous career, and in the early 70s is a very powerful chart presence. Helen Reddy, who just a few months ago, passed away, but this is a song that launched her career as well. And so it's a very, as we've talked about throughout these past few shows, 1971 is a very compelling year. It's just a very compelling year for popular music, and it will continue, right? As we move from month to month, it'll just be amazing, the songs that kind of bubble up to the surface. It's really, 71 is a year for the ages when it comes to pop music. All right.
Just a real quick question. the album of the year for 1971 was what?
Well, see, I'm inclined to say something like Tapestry, but I know that that's not right. So what was it?
You would think so, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you'd think so.
Because the Tapestry was actually one of the best, was for a while held the record for the best-selling album of all time.
That's right. It's
had that distinction for a while.
No question. It's considered,
But
considered one of the great albums of all time, but apparently it's not it. So I don't know.
Jesus Christ Superstar was the top album of 1971.
That's interesting. And I think probably appropriate in a way. I mean, Jesus Christ Superstar in its own way was earth-shaking. It really was earth-shaking. It really was a powerful artistic product.
And was the beginning of two careers.
Yes.
Andrew Lloyd Webber.
No
really,
question.
Owed their career to the success of that musical, I think.
No, that's exactly right. No, that's interesting. Okay. Well, I think that wraps up the chart for mid-June 1971. So, Dave, I've got some final thoughts for our loyal viewers.
Yeah. Listen, if you like the show, show us some love, give us a thumbs up, or share some of your thoughts. We'd love to hear anything that you have to say about what you've watched here. You can subscribe to the show right here. You can watch other episodes of 50 Years Ago this month, right up here. And you can check out our playlist, which I highly recommend,
right
here.
There we go.
And that's pretty much wraps that up.
There we go. I think so too. And so check us out
next month.
See you next month again. Don't forget to check us out on Twitter at StephenDaves1. StephenDaves1 on Twitter. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next month. Bye-bye now.